As a therapist, I get asked a lot of different questions. Today, I'm going to talk about why you might need a diagnosis when seeing a mental health professional. Hi, I'm Ashley Garden, licensed marriage and family therapist. I post a variety of videos about mental health and different ways that you can practice self-care. To be quite honest, in order to see a therapist, you do not have to have a documented diagnosis. The diagnosis comes in more for billing and continuity of care. So if you are seeing multiple professionals, whether it's a doctor, a psychiatrist, a therapist, having a diagnosis helps everybody stay on the same page. Now, when billing insurance, you need to have a diagnosis in order for your therapist to bill your insurance. A therapist uses the DSM-5 for mental health diagnoses. It is important to understand that diagnosing can be tricky because insurance companies do not reimburse for all mental health diagnoses, even though the DSM-5 has it written as a diagnosis. A diagnosis has to be put down for an individual session, a family session, or even a couples therapy session. Now, the diagnosis has to be for whoever the primary patient is. When doing couples or family therapy, the therapist will usually put in a secondary code that is from the DSM-5 that indicates that these are sessions related to family conflict or things like that. So for example, if you have a couples therapy session and let's say Jane is struggling with some anxiety due to the conflict of the relationship, the therapist might diagnose her with an adjustment disorder with anxiety and then have a secondary diagnosis, relationship distress with spouse or intimate partner. In this example, the insurance will not reimburse for that secondary diagnosis. That is why the first diagnosis has to be put down for the main individual that the appointment was made for. If you want to avoid having a diagnosis at all, you can still see a therapist, but you would need to do self-pay. So that means no insurance billing. So you would have to pay out of pocket for the full price of that therapist. Although this costs a little bit more, it also gives you more control of that personal information that the therapist documents in their notes. I do want to point out that having a diagnosis is not a bad thing. It does help for that continuity of care between providers, especially if you're working with a psychiatrist or your primary care doctor is working on medication, things like that, besides just working with a therapist. But I think it's important to note that you do not have to have a diagnosis in order to meet with a mental health professional. I hope you found this information helpful. Please feel free to leave any questions in the comment section below. Until next time, be safe, be well, and take care of yourself.